What's up, everybody? Today, as you can see up here, we're going to have a look at what we call the past subjunctive. It's also known as the imperfect subjunctive, or in Spanish, el imperfecto del subjuntivo. So we're going to look at that, and I guess I should start out by saying there's actually two ways of doing what we call the past subjunctive in Spanish, but I'm going to only show you guys one, and so hopefully that'll avoid some of the confusion and in terms of just wrapping your head around this concept as well, because this is effectively taking what what would have been used in the present subjunctive and bringing it into the past. And so one of the things I like to stress is that if you see a present tense weirdo, right, a weirdo would be on this side of in the first clause, you would use a present tense subjunctive. And so if you see a past tense weirdo, which is what you see here, we're going to use the past subjunctive. And so we're going to walk through that today. We're going to do a few things. One, we're going to talk about how to conjugate it. And I've actually put a number of different conjugations up here. I strategically put them sort of in order from regular to irregular. And that way I could show you how many of these work as we walk through it. And so we have here comer, which is a regular ER verb. Salir, which really for all intents and purposes is regular as well. In the present tense, it's an irregular yo verb, but doesn't really matter in this case. But I thought I would put salir in there, and then I put dormir, which is a stem changer in the preterite tense, and then tener, which is an irregular verb in the preterite tense. And so, I put 4 examples up there just for fun, and like I said, hopefully you'll find it helpful. And again, just to put these up there because I want you to see sort of the difference between, using these verbs that are for all intents and purposes regular verbs in the preterite, and then this one here that is a stem changer, and then of course this one that's irregular. And so again, I want to make note of that. And then afterwards, as you can see here, we're going to do some practice. And so I want to go ahead and get started and just actually start by walking you through how to conjugate. And so there's a number of things I hope you'll walk away with after this lesson. One, how to conjugate verbs in the past subjunctive, at least this form of the past subjunctive, and how to use it in a sentence. In other words, conjugating it to agree with the subject of the second clause, right? And we'll talk about that in a second as well. And then, of course, just sort of getting an idea of how it's conjugated here with these examples. So let's go ahead and get started. And so to conjugate the verb, or to form what we call the past subjunctive or imperfect subjunctive or el imperfecto del subjuntivo in Spanish, we're going to conjugate the verb in the third person plural preterite. Right now that's going to take some sort of digging into that archive of conjugations because, like I said, it's the third person plural preterite that we're using. And so that's why I've written the verbs up that I did, which included a stem changer and an irregular in the preterite tense. And so, like I said, third person plural preterite, right? That's what you do, step 1. And then you would drop the RON, right? Now, some grammar books and other places will tell you, show you just to drop the ON, for example. But I'm going to go ahead and say drop RON, and hopefully that'll make sense as well. But you drop the RON, which once you put the verb in the third person plural preterite, it will end with RON. And so you're really dropping that off the back of the verb and of any of the verbs that you want to put into the past subjunctive. And so that's your second step. And then your third step is adding these different endings to it, right? And I want to make note of something right here. This is just a line and an accent. So the vowel that will go there, right, when you attach this as a conjugation, the accent will go over that vowel. And here's a good example, comiéramos. And so the accent goes over this vowel right here that comes before that R. And so, but like I said, we'll run through these verbs so you can really see what it looks like when you conjugate the verb in the past subjunctive. And so, like I said, just really quickly once more, step 1, conjugate verb in the third person plural preterite. Number two, step two, is drop the RON, which will be at the end of each conjugated verb once you conjugate it in the third person plural preterite, right? That's a mouthful for sure. And then the last thing you do, right, which is this is what creates or what makes the past subjunctive conjugation. And so you would add one of these conjugations, of course, agreeing with the subject. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, I want to run through these verbs, pronounce them with you all, and then we're going to fill in some blanks, right? And so that really, hopefully, will give you, a better idea of how to use this as well, finishing off with some examples. And so, like I said, I want to run through these. I'll pronounce them once, and then I'll pronounce them again slowly, so then you can pronounce them right along with me, right? Or after me, I guess. So, comer, which means to eat, right? It's a regular ER verb in the preterite, right? Pretty regular most of its life in Spanish anyways. But for this case, it is a regular ER verb. And its third person plural preterite is comieron. Comieron, right? And then we drop this RON, not that either. We drop the RON, right? And we're just sitting here with these letters, right? And then we're going to fill in that space right there with these conjugations right here, right? And so that's why you see what you see here, right? As far as conjugations are concerned. So let's run through this. We have comiera, comieras, comiera, comiéramos, comierais, comieran, right? Now I'm gonna do that again, and feel free to pronounce it after me, and I'll do a little pause so you can do so. Comiera, comieras, comiera, comiéramos, comierais, comieran, right? And so let's move to salir. Salir is salieron, right? I'm actually going to change up markers just to mix it up a little bit. We're going to go with green. So we have salieron, right? Which again, salir is to go out or to leave. And so we have salieron. We, of course, drop the RON, right? We're left with the rest of the word. And then we would add, as you can see here, our endings to it, right? And again, the accent being over this E. So that's salieramos. And so let's pronounce these. Saliera, salieras, saliera, salieramos, salierais, salieran. Now notice it's salieran with an AN, but the third person plural here was salieron, right? So you got to make sure you pronounce that properly, right? So you do the past subjunctive right. And so I'm going to do that again, and you follow after me. Saliera, salieras, saliera, salieramos, salierais, salieran. Right? Notice it's an, right? Salieran. So moving right along to dormir. Now, dormir is a stem changer in the third person singular and plural in the preterite. And so if some of that's a little bit challenging, or you're having a hard time remembering a lot of that, check out that video on the preterite, and hopefully that'll be helpful as well. Because this really is, it takes a lot to get to what we're calling the past subjunctive. It takes a lot of thinking until you really dial it in. So, of course, if you need to have a look at that video, by all means do so. But this is a stem changer in the preterite. And the criteria for it to be a stem changer is it needs to be an IR verb and a stem changer in the present indicative, right? And so if it does do that, which it does, it would then become a stem changer in the preterite third person singular and plural. Now that's a whole lot to say. This O changes to a U in the preterite. And so, again, like I said, if you need to check out that video, go for it. And so we have durmieron, right? Durmieron. I'm going to change up markers, right? See what we get here. Let's go with black, right? And so we have durmieron, right? And so that's what that is in the preterite. And so again, just like with the others, we drop that RON, and then we add our appropriate conjugations. So durmiera, durmieras, durmiera, durmieramos, durmierais, durmieran, right? Durmieran, right? So dur, right? That D-U-R, not door, right? D-O-R. And that's of course, that's a slight tweak, but this is a U here, not an O. And so let's do that again. This is a fun one, so I'll say it, and then of course, like these other ones, just say it after me. Durmiera, durmieras, durmiera, durmiéramos, durmierais, durmieran. Right? So hopefully you were able to walk through that. Of course, with any of these, you can always hit pause, or you can go back and, of course, try to pronounce these again along with me. But yeah, this is kind of moving us away from this regular preterite conjugation, and this again is our stem changer in the preterite. And then this last one here, tener, is actually an irregular in the preterite. And there's a whole host of other ones, but tener seems to be it's a good example. And so I'm going to change markers again. We're going to go with this one here. And again, just in case anybody was wondering what tener was in the preterite, it's tuvieron, right? And again, of course, I know I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but you drop the RON and then we add our appropriate conjugation. And so we have tuviera, tuvieras, tuviera, tuviéramos, tuvierais, tuvieran. Now, I know that I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I do want to bring your attention to these, right? Notice that accent there, right? And you take note of that sound. And I'm going to do this one again, but again, just take note of how that sound, where you put the stress, right? And it's because of the accent there. And so, again, I'm going to walk through this last one, and then we're going to do some examples, but feel free to pronounce it after me. Tuviera, tuvieras, tuviera, tuviéramos, tuvierais, tuvieran, right? And so hopefully you were able to sort of begin to conceptualize how this past subjunctive is conjugated, right? Again, just to reiterate, conjugate in the third person plural preterite, that's our starting point, right? And then from there you drop the RON and then you add your appropriate endings. So let's go ahead and look at how we would do this in a sentence, right? And for this, I'm going to do a fill in the blank because I really want to pay attention to how this is conjugated and how it's used. So because it's, that's a good first step in sort of wrapping your head around the use of this, right? And so something I said at the beginning of the video, present tense weirdo, present tense subjunctive. Now, what did I mean by that, right? And before we get started, I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by that, and then we're going to run through these, right? Now, notice that number one is esperaba que tú, and then tener un buen día ayer, right? So we're going to do that in the present tense, right above it, and so you can see what I'm talking about with this present tense weirdo, present tense subjunctive thing, right? And so really we would just put, and this would be yo here, of course. So yo espero que tú tengas un buen día, right? We're going to just leave it at that. So yo espero que tú tengas un buen día. Now, what did I mean by this present tense weirdo, present tense subjunctive thing? We're going to change markers. So esperar, or in this case, yo espero, is a present tense weirdo, right? And so this goes back to our present subjunctive rules. And again, have a look at that video if this is starting to be a little bit confusing, because this is a very challenging concept, right? And so this is in present tense. So present tense weirdo, espero, presently hoping, then you use the present subjunctive, right? Because it's a weirdo, you have to use the subjunctive in the second clause, right? With this dividing the clauses. So this is the second clause. And this is the verb in the second clause. And so that's why it's espero que tú tengas. Now for the past subjunctive, right, this right here was called the present subjunctive. So that's why it's present tense weirdo, present tense subjunctive. So for the past subjunctive, it's all the same thing except it's all being done in the past, right? So past tense weirdo, past tense subjunctive. And that's what all these examples will be, right? And so as you can see, esperaba, recomendó, insistimos, era probable, no creíamos, all that's all those are weirdos, but just in the past tense. And so because they're past tense weirdos, we're gonna use the past subjunctive. And so like I said, walking away from this video, my hope is that you can understand how to conjugate it and then how it would work in the sentence. In other words, with these fill in the blanks, understanding what those conjugations should be, right? And so, as always, if you want to go ahead and hit pause and try these on your own, by all means do so. But we're going to keep moving along, and we're going to walk through these examples right here. And so we're going to start out with number 1 here. I'm going to change it up so we can really see what goes in this blank. And so, again, the first one here is yo esperaba, right? So I was hoping, right? Yo esperaba que tú, right? So now we need to put tener in the past subjunctive to agree with to, right? And we just happen to conveniently have that up here, right? And so that's tú vieras, right? Tú vieras, right? So again, this is the verb that in question. We want it in the past subjunctive, right? We already know how to do it, but why did we do it, right? This is a past tense weirdo, right? This is a past tense weirdo, and because of that, we've got to use a subjunctive of some sort, but we're going to use the past subjunctive. Because remember, present tense weirdo, present tense subjunctive. Past tense weirdo, past tense subjunctive. So keep that in mind, right? I'm going to switch it up. I think we're going to go with green. That's going to really pop. So we have here number 2. La profesora recomendó. The professor recommended, right? So again, past tense weirdo. Que yo estudiar por el examen, right? And so la profesora recomendó que yo. This needs to be in the past subjunctive. So we would do, I'm just going to walk through this one. Right, so we're going to do estudiaron, right? That's the third person plural preterite. We would drop the ron, and then we have to make it agree for yo. Now, these apply to all AR-ER-IRs, and so, the good news is there's one ending, or one type of conjugation, I should probably say. And so we're going to apply this, right? This one right here, because it's for yo. We're going to apply that to here. So we have, la profesora recomendó que yo estudiara por el examen. There you go, right? Moving along to number 3. Nosotros insistimos, we insisted, right? Again, past tense weirdo. Nosotros insistimos en que, right? Subject of the second clause. Verb in question, ir, which needs to be in the subjunctive. Past tense weirdo. Past tense subjunctive, right? And so ellos, and then what is ir in the third person preterite? That's fueron, right? And so I'm going to write that right here, right? Fueron, right? That is our third person plural preterite for the verb ir. Now, our second rule is to drop that ron, and our third rule is to add one of these according to the subject, which is ellos. So we're going to say fueran. Right? Because we're going to go ahead and add that. A la playa ayer, right? So, nosotros insistimos en que ellos fueran a la playa ayer. Now, for some of you, you're like, well, insistimos can be present tense and it can be past tense. How did you know which one it was? Well, other than being the one that put this all together, I'll explain a bit better. I'll give you a better answer than that, right? It really comes down to this word right here, yesterday. Right? And so that tells me that we, right, in the case of this example, we insisted in that they go to the beach yesterday, right? Or were to go to the beach yesterday. And so, nosotros insistimos en que ellos fueran a la playa ayer. And it's really this word, yesterday, that is telling me it's in the past. So, número 4, era probable, it was probable, right? And when we use es probable, right, which is requiring us to use the subjunctive in the second clause, right? If it's es probable, present tense weirdo, present tense subjunctive, right? And so, because we're using it in the past, era probable, past tense weirdo, past tense subjunctive. So, era probable que ellos know, it was probable that they did not come to the fiesta last night, to the party last night. And so, venir is an irregular, right? And let's walk through it. So we've got vinieron, right? That's our third person plural preterite of venir. Vinieron, right? Notice that's an I there. We drop our RON, and this is our subject, so we want to agree with that. So we're going to put vinieran. Era probable que ellos no vinieran a la fiesta anoche. It was possible that they didn't come to the party last night. So, and then the last one, no creíamos que tú llegara a tiempo a la clase. We didn't believe that you arrived on time to class, right? And so, again, we have llegar here. So, no creer, or in the case of the present tense, it would be no creemos, right? We don't believe. And so that falls under doubt, disbelief, denial. It's a present tense weirdo, and then we would do present tense subjunctive. For this example specifically, of course, we have past tense weirdo. So we're going to do past tense subjunctive. So let's have a look. No creímos que tú, right? So this is our subject, and then we're using this verb. So we have llegaron, right? Llegaron, third person plural preterite. We drop the RON, and we put, right, for two, llegaras, right? No creíamos que tú llegaras a tiempo a la clase. We didn't believe that you arrived on time to class, right? And so that's how these work. Let me walk through these one more time and translate them so you can see kind of what you're saying. So number one, we have esperaba que tú tuvieras un buen día ayer. I was hoping that you had a good day yesterday. That's really what you're saying in English. Número dos, la profesora recomendó que yo, right? I'm going to write this down here so you can see it a little better. Por el examen. So the professor recommended that I study for the exam, right? The professor recommended that I study for the exam. That's effectively what you're saying in English when you do this. Nosotros insistimos en que ellos fueran a la playa ayer, right? We insisted that they go to the beach yesterday, right? Or were to go, which is what I said earlier, right? But we insisted that they go to the beach. Again, that shift back into English, you're going to notice there's a slightly different way you would say it in English. But grammatically in Spanish, past tense weirdo, past tense subjunctive. So, número cuatro, era probable que ellos no vinieran a la fiesta anoche. It was possible, or it was probable, that they didn't come to the party last night, right? No creíamos que tú llegaras a tiempo a la clase, right? We didn't believe that you arrived on time to class. And so, hopefully this helps you get a better sense of what the past or imperfect subjunctive are. Or in Spanish, like I said, it's el imperfecto de subjuntivo, how it's conjugated, how it works in a sentence, and how it works sort of with that whole weirdo idea we worked with in the present subjunctive. Hopefully this was helpful. Buena suerte y adios.